All right. It's time to take our floor plan now and let's add some annotations to it. And let's also clean it up so that it's showing the things that would typically show on a floor plan. So what I mean by that is we wouldn't typically see the interior elevations on a floor plan. That's more for furnishings plans that we would show that. We also wouldn't show the floor patterns on a floor plan typically, or if we did, we wouldn't want them to stand out. So we can talk about how we can minimize the floor pattern. We also wouldn't show furniture on a furnishings or on a floor plan. So let's take some time and let's clean this up. So the first thing to do to clean this up is in visibility graphics. It's where you really control how everything looks in the view. And if you remember, you can get to that by using a keyboard shortcut, which I think is either GG or VG for you guys. And it'll pop up this window. If you can't remember the shortcut, you can also go over here to visibility graphics, override. So you need to go to the view properties. So make sure you don't have anything clicked. And if you look over here, there's the visibility graphics and you can hit edit and it'll bring that up. I'm going to stop for a minute. I'm going to give you a little tip because I think it's a good time for you to learn this. Let's click out of that. And if you go over to the Revit home button, sorry, not the Revit home button, the file button, click file. And if you scroll down to the bottom and look here, there's something called options. If you click in there, this is where you can control a lot of the main features for the program. You can experiment in here with all of these settings if you'd like, but something I like to use a lot are the keyboard shortcuts. You're not stuck with whatever keyboard shortcuts the program has by default. I make my own custom keyboard shortcuts all the time, especially because there's a lot of commands that don't have shortcuts by default. So I add a lot of shortcuts to commands that don't normally have shortcuts. So if you go in here, you can look through these tabs, and what you're looking for is the keyboard shortcuts. So if you go to the second tab down under user interface, there's something called keyboard shortcuts right here, and you can customize them. So you can click that, and this will give you a readout of all the commands in Revit. This is every single command. And then next to the command name is the shortcut. And Revit typically does 2-letter shortcuts. You can do a 1-letter or a 3-letter, but typically almost all of them are 2-letter shortcuts. And then this kind of tells you where you would find the command. So that sometimes this is helpful because maybe there's 2 finish commands. There's one that finishes a ceiling sketch and one that finishes like a floor sketch. So you'd want to know which command, even though they have the same name, you want to know which one you're assigning the shortcut to. So if you come up here and you search, you can search any command you want. So if we do visibility graphics, you see how here's the command visibility graphics, and you can see my shortcut is VG, but you could select it and down here you can remove it, and you can assign a new one by just typing it in here. I'm going to put VG back and I'm going to hit assign. And it gave me an error because it still thinks that VG was already assigned to visibility graphics. So it's just telling me that it's assigned somewhere else. But it's great because if you have that shortcut that you're trying to enter, if it's already assigned to a different command, it will pop up with that window and it'll let you know what it's already assigned to. So I'm just going to click. The other thing while you're here is you can also save all your shortcuts. And this is important because every year I upgrade my Revit to the newest version, and then I have to re-enter all my keyboard shortcuts. So the fastest way to do that is to export all of my shortcuts, and it saves it in a file on my computer. And then in the new version of Revit, I can import my file and it will set up all my keyboard shortcuts for me. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're using Revit. So it's kind of a side note, but I thought it might be a good time to teach you that now that maybe things aren't so overwhelming. Because if I would have taught you that in the beginning, I think you might not have retained much, or or you wouldn't have had some experience to know how important keyboard shortcuts are in the speed at which you do things. So you might be at that point now. If you aren't, don't worry about it. You don't have to assign keyboard shortcuts. You don't have to customize them. You can leave everything the way it is. All right, so back to what we were doing. We were opening the visibility graphics panel. So I hit VG on my keyboard, and here we are. So we want to shut off the interior elevations. So let's go to, sometimes some things you're not sure if they are in which tab they should be on, if they're considered a model category or an annotation category. Some things are clearly model categories, like furniture is probably a model category, right? Because it's a physical piece of the model. So let's just go to F for furniture. Another trick is if you're in here, you can click a letter on your keyboard and it will jump down to that section. So I'm going to hit F and it jumped down to the first thing in the F's. Now I can see furniture. I'm just going to uncheck this box and hit apply. And now you can see the furniture's gone. So that's step one we needed to do. The other one is elevation. So let's look in the E's. Okay, so it's not here. So it's probably an annotation category. So here we go, elevation. So let's click that and click apply. Now you can see our elevations went away. Now you have to be careful because when you turn off the elevations, it will turn off both exterior elevation markers and interior elevations. So sometimes you have a view where you maybe want to show the exterior and not the interior, or vice versa. And in that case, you would use something called a filter, which is beyond this class's scope, but just know that if you ever need that, you're going to have to do something a little more advanced than what I'm showing you right now. Okay, so the next thing we wanted is, let's adjust the floors, because right now the floors are showing the floor pattern. So if we come here to floors, if you remember, I showed you how to make the floors transparent so that we could see beneath them, so we could see our image. Let's click OK and get out of that dialog box. I think it's probably time that we don't need our image anymore. I'm going to pull it to the side and I'm going to turn the cropping off the view so that it doesn't crop the view anymore. So now we can see our image over to the side, but it's not behind our model. Because I'm going to delete it, but before I delete it, I probably want to name all of the rooms, and I still want to look at this picture for when I'm naming the rooms. Then I'll delete it. So let's pull it over to the side. Let's go back to our visibility graphics box, and let's go to the floors. And let's turn the transparency back to 0% transparent and apply. Okay, so now the floors look normal. But we probably don't want the floors. We can either turn the floors off and then we won't see them at all, or because if we shut them off, what's going to happen? Let me show you. It'll go away, but then you can see we don't have an outline now for our back deck area. And it also means we can't select our floor in this view in case we need to edit something. So I like the floors to be on. So let's turn the floor back on and let's look at some of the other options here. So if I go over here, you can see we can control how they call it the projection or surface of the floor. So when we're just looking down at the floor, what it looks like. And then we can also control what happens if we cut a floor. So in a floor plan, you don't cut floors really. So we're not going to worry about controlling the cutting elements. But the projection surface we would like to maybe take advantage of. We already talked about the transparency, and we've edited that before. And lines is for the edges of the floor. We don't really want to mess with those. I think it's fine to show the edges. But what we do want to control is the pattern. Right now, the patterns are showing. So maybe we just want to shut off the patterns. We'll keep the floors, but shut off the floor pattern. So if you click on that, there's something here that shows the foreground pattern and the background pattern. Let's just shut both of them off and click OK. And now you can see the button shows that we've got overrides on this. And now if we hit apply, you can see it put the edges of the floor back in, but it's not showing the patterns in the floor. So that's great. Let's click OK. And now our floor plan looks about like we would expect it to. It's nice and clean and ready for us to start editing or start annotating. Sections we usually do show in the floor plan. Those are important so that the person who's looking at the drawing knows where a section is being cut. So let's do our first annotation then. One of the most important annotations in a floor plan is to label the rooms. But before we can annotate the rooms, we have to create rooms. And Revit will help us do that. It can kind of tell where rooms are because it's surrounded by walls. But then there are some areas that are different rooms, but there's no wall in between them. So for example, this living room, dining room, and kitchen area, there's no wall in between to separate it. So we're going to have to do something tricky. Well, not tricky, but a new command. So we're going to first create rooms. And rooms we haven't talked about yet, but they are a 3D object in Revit because a room has a volume and a width, a height, the length. It has all of those items. It also has properties. Like a room has a volume, it has an area, it has, you can assign materials to the room. So let's look how we do that. We have to create a room object. So if you come up to the architectural tab and go over to the section that's called room and area, there's this little button called room. And if you click it, it will start the room command. And right now, if I hover over different parts of my model, it will try to show you in light blue. See how there's a light blue border around the closet? It'll try to show you where it thinks rooms should be. But see how this room, that's the dining, kitchen, and living room, see how it thinks it's one room? That's wrong. So we're going to have to fix that. But let's do the other rooms for now. So I usually try to click in the middle. And it's not only placing the room object, but it's also placing the room tag along with the room. And do you see how once you've placed a room object, it turns blue? That's what we want for the entire house. Okay, now what do we do for this room that's really 3 rooms? Let's just place 3 tags and it's going to give us an error. So I'm going to place one in the living room and one in the dining room. And you can see it's saying there's multiple rooms in the same region. So we're just going to click OK for now because we understand that. We did it on purpose. And we'll do another one and it's going to give us the error again. We're going to click OK. And then the last area would be the covered porch area. We'll click there and it gives us a different area. It's saying this room can't be enclosed because there's nothing enclosing it. So it's just an open area. And again, we'll just click through that because we know that that's a problem. Then we're going to hit escape to stop placing rooms. And you can see now all the rooms disappear now. And we're just left with the tags. Now it's hard to select a room again because you have to kind of hover over where that X was, where you saw that X. In order to select the room, you have to hover over that area. And it's particularly hard right now because my cursor is trying to select the floor rather than the room. So one thing that helps to select rooms is to go over down at the bottom. And do you remember we talked about selecting elements by face? Right now it's allowing me to select a face of an object to select it. I'm going to click that off. And now I have to click the edge of the floor in order to select it. When I'm in the middle of the floor, it doesn't select anything. So now I can hover over where I remember that X being, and now that's the room. I can tell because if I hover over it, that little pop-up says it's a room. And when I click it, you can also see over here, the properties for the room come up and it even says room right there. So if you ever had to move a room somewhere else, you could grab that. Or if you need to grab it so you can change its properties, you can also do that. Okay, so that's how you place rooms. Now let's fix some of the problems we created. So the first problem was we had one room that we wanted to divide into 3 without walls. So let's do that right now. if you go back to the architectural tab, back to where the rooms were, the room command was, next to that is something called a room separator. If you click that, it allows you to draw a line to separate a room rather than having to rely on walls. So let's draw a line right along this floor where the floor changed materials like this. And now it drew a line, and now it's telling you that's great. You separated this room from that room, but you still have two rooms that are together. We know that, so we'll click OK. And then we'll go back to the room separation line again. And let's pick where we want to separate the kitchen from the dining room. Let's maybe just do this corner all the way across like this. And there you go. So now when I click this room, you can see it only fills in this area. And then if I come back here to select this room, it only highlights that area. And then the dining room now only highlights that area. So now everything's been separated. So that's great. Now we want to fix this problem. We'll also go to the room separator again, and we're just going to draw a border around that, and then click OK. And now if I hover over there, do you see how it used to just be a box, and now it fills the whole area? It goes all the way to the edges where the room separation line is. You can also see the room separation line. It's this red dashed line. And we don't want to see that typically in a floor plan. So again, we'll open our visibility graphics. And I think this falls under lines. So if you go to lines, there's this little box you can click, and this will tell you all the different kinds of lines that are in the model. So we want to look for, I think, room separation right here. You'll unclick that and click OK. Now you can see that red dashed line is no longer there. But remember, if you needed to change or edit your model and you needed to change those lines, remember you'd have to turn them back on in order to see them. Okay, so now let's quickly name the rooms. Right now it just gave it a generic name. So I'm going to turn my caps lock back on, and I'm going to name these the same as our reference model. So stoop. Oh, sorry, and I should probably say, when you click the tag, it highlights the tag, and then if you click again at the room name, it allows you to edit the room name. So we'll name that the foyer. This is a closet. I usually just do CL to abbreviate because closets aren't really big, so it's hard to fit a whole name in there. So we'll call this bathroom. We'll just call it bath 1. Actually, just bath is fine. We don't have more than one bathroom. We have the primary bathroom over here. So we'll call it primary bath. And this will be the primary closet. Primary bed. Okay, so I'm going to pause this while I continue to do this, but you go ahead and name all of your rooms. All right, so I've named all my rooms. And so I'm going to delete this reference. Well, actually, here's what I'm going to teach you. I'll teach you a different concept. So I personally, whenever I have a model, I make one more floor plan for myself that never goes on a sheet. Because do you see how these floor plans, they all have blue next to them, which means they're on a sheet. So we want them to look a very specific way, which is sometimes difficult when you're modeling because you want to see other things when you're modeling. So for example, if I wanted to see where my room separations were, or I wanted to see my floor patterns while I was working, I could either go to the different views that show those things, or in the case of room separation lines, those never should show. I don't really think those show ever on a floor plan of any kind of plan. And so you have to turn them on, do what you're going to do, change the model around, and then remember to shut them back off. Because if you don't forget to shut them off, they'll be showing up on your sheets when you print them. So I don't like to think about that. I create myself, when I'm trying to model or edit the model, I create myself what's called a working floor plan so that I can turn stuff on and off however I want it, and it doesn't affect the sheets. So I'm just going to duplicate this view and I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to call it working -main floor plan. So if I go into here, I can open this model up and you can see my annotations aren't there, the room names aren't there. But what is here, or what I can do now, is because it's not on a sheet, I can turn anything I want on. So if I want to go to my visibility graphics, I can go down to rooms. And if I click this plus sign, I can turn on that X and I can turn on the fill. So now I can see where rooms are at. If I ever want to change them, I can go to the visibility graphics and I can go to lines and I can turn on my room separation lines. And now if I ever need to edit the room separation line, I can drag it like this. And like if I wanted to change the shape of that room, I can see clearly where my rooms are and how I change them. So I'm going to undo and put things back. So if ever I need to work in the model or edit the, excuse me, edit the model, I come back to my working. Okay, so right now we're trying to annotate the floor plan. So I'll go back to the floor plan, but it will be helpful to have that working plan. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this image and I'm going to go to the modify tab and I'm going to hit the little scissors to cut this. And then I'm going to my working plan and I'm going to go back to the modify tab and I'm going to paste the image back to this plan. So now I can always look at my floor plan picture, but it's not going to be on a sheet. So now if I go back to my floor plan, the image is gone and I'm going to turn my crop, I'm going to crop my view again and it will crop my view back down to the way it was. So now my sheet, the view as it is on the sheet, will still look good. So that's going to be a trick we're going to use that working main floor plan a lot so that you don't mess up the views that you've already worked hard to create. Okay, so the next type of thing we would typically show on a floor plan would be to tag the doors and the windows. Those are pretty important tags to create. So let's do that. If you go to the architectural, the annotate tab, there is what's called the tag by category command. If you click on that, it will start to try to tag whatever you're hovering over. So if you hover over a wall, it'll try to tag the wall. If you hover over a window, it'll try to tag the window. And if you hover over the door, it'll try to tag the door. And you see how the tag for the doors is kind of a pill shape. The tag for the windows is a diamond. And the tag for the walls is a square. Those are because those are what the template has loaded in already for doors, windows, and walls. If you worked for an office, they'll have their own default tags. When we looked at the lecture, you could see my residential tags looked very different. They had actual text in them that showed you the size of the door. But the commercial project I showed you looked more like what we're showing here. It just has a number. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to use what's in the template because creating your own tags is a little bit outside of the subject matter of this course. It gets complicated because these are families. They're called annotation families, which means you'd have to know how to go into the family editor and edit the family. And it's good to know that you can change the way these look, but for the time being, we're just going to use what Revit gives us. So when we're placing these, when we hover over a door, you can see it changes to the tag. And then if I clicked, it would place the tag. But you see how it's putting a leader line? I don't like that. So if you come up here while you're still in the command, you can uncheck this box that says leader. And now when you place it, it'll just kind of place it on the object like that. And this one that it placed a leader with, just click it and come up here and uncheck leader and it will remove the leader line. And then we can move it. So with tags, window tags, I like the window tag to be just outside of the window. So the way that it tagged it is good. I like the way it did it. The doors, I like to put them in the doorway if possible, but I do not, this is a drafting standard. You're not going to get graded on this, but in a professional context, if we don't like when lines run over other lines in a drawing. So in this particular case, because it's showing the door jamb or the seal of the door, we're just going to move the tag out of the door so that the lines aren't running into each other because it's messy. And same with this tag. Do you see how messy this is? It's a little too close to the room label and the doors are running into it. So I'm going to turn the tag. So if you go up, if you click the tag and then go up to this little bar up here, you can see where it says horizontal. You can drop this down and say vertical, and it will rotate it. And then I can move it. I'm just going to move it in the doorway, but just out of the swing symbol. So that looks a little better now. All right, so you can go through and you can one by one tag everything, or there's another command I'd like you to learn. So if you go to the Annotate tab on the ribbon, next to where it says Tag by Category, there's something called Tag All. If you click that, a dialog box will come up. And this is going to tag anything that's not already tagged in the view. And then you can pick what you want tagged. So we're going to look down the category list here, and we want doors, and we want windows. And we could have done this with the rooms. So doors and windows, and we're going to click OK. Do you see how it now tagged everything automatically for you? Now all we're going to do is we're just going to go adjust everything to make sure it's clean. So I'm going to mass select all of the door tags that need to be rotated so I can do it all at once. So there we go. Now I'm going to change them from horizontal to vertical. And now I'm just going to quickly move them so that they look nice. Again, this isn't something I'm necessarily going to grade you on, but if you leave those the way they were showing, just by default, oh, see, I forgot to rotate this one. If you left them the way that they came in by default, your employer is not going to be happy with you. That's always the sign of a new drafter, is they don't know how to make the drawings look nice. They always look cluttered and things are running on top of each other. So go ahead and edit all of the tags so that they look nice and they're not running into anything. And the windows, luckily, they look like they just kind of came in correctly. So the other thing I'm noticing that I hate is these room numbers. On a commercial job, you always have the room number showing. But on a residential property, you probably don't need, there's not so many rooms that you need them to be numbered. You can rely on their name. So I'm going to shut these off. And it really depends on how well this tag was made. Again, it's a family. So whoever made the family is the one who controls what we can change about it. But if I click on one of these tags and I go over here to its properties and I click the drop-down menu, you can see whoever made this already made different versions of the tag. So if I click this one, it will show the room and the area. Or there's an option to show the volume. I don't know why you'd want the volume unless you're a mechanical engineer. So let's go, the one with area is kind of nice, but it's still showing the room number. So let's click on the tag again and let's edit the type properties. Let's open that up and let's see what they give us. So it looks like there's a setting to show the volume, to show the room number and the area. So they do allow us to shut off the area. There just isn't a type of tag yet made that doesn't show the, sorry, you can turn the room number on and off, and there just isn't one type made yet that doesn't show the room number. So let's make that right now. This is just like editing the walls or the floors or the ceiling. We went into its type properties. We can see that we can change the settings right here. So let's, before we change anything, let's duplicate it. And we'll call this room tag with area, because let's keep the area, but let's shut off. So room tag with area, no number. Click OK. And we're just going to uncheck the room number box and click OK. So now it's showing the name and the area. So I kind of like that. I also want to make one that just has only the name of the room. So let's click on the closet. Let's edit the type and let's duplicate it. And let's call it room tag name only. Click OK. And then let's shut off the room number. So now this room tag is only showing the name. That's all it shows. So now the closet looks a lot cleaner. There's not a big box that's hitting the walls. So now what do we do to apply this to all of them? If you click on one of the tags that we want to change and you right click, remember how there's this select all instances? And I can select all of this tag that's visible in this view right now. So let's do that. And you see now how it's highlighted all the other room tags that are that same type? Now we can change all of them at the same time to the room tag with area but no number. Click that. And now it changed it to match the kitchen. And then this closet, let's change it to have name only. And in fact, I don't love the way there's a gap between the area and the name. So let's just change, let's select all of them. And let's just change them all to name only. There, now it's nice and clean. The other thing that's bothering me is you can see this tag is being hit by this line. So let's just move the tag out of the way. There, now everything looks nice and clean and it's kind of relaxing to look at compared to how busy it was before. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the visibility graphics and I'm going to shut off the reference planes. So if we go to ours, and oh, it's an annotation category. So let's go to the R's in the annotation. Reference planes, let's shut those off and click OK. So now we don't have the dotted lines either. And now it's looking like a really good floor plan. We've tagged the rooms, the doors, the windows. If this was a commercial project, we'd also tag the walls. But since it's not, we're not going to do that. So we're just going to leave that for now, looking the way it is. So now if I look at my floor plan sheet, you can see because I placed my view on the sheet, all the changes we made in the view are now visible on the sheet. And it's looking really nice. Now if I go back to my working floor plan, you can see, okay, I can still see my reference planes if I need those. I can see where my rooms are. And none of that is on a sheet, and I don't have to worry about printing it. I can even, really quickly, by tagging all, I can add my window tags, my door tags, and my room tags. Where's the room tags? Right there. And you can even, before it places the tag, you can come right here and you can change what tag it uses. So we're going to use name only tag and then click OK. And now it quickly applies those tags. But because this is my working view and it's never going to be on a sheet, I don't have to clean everything up. I don't have to go move the tags around. I can just leave them the way they are because this is just information for me when I'm working in the project. So if I ever have to edit anything, I can come to this view, move it around, and it doesn't have to be pretty. All right, so that's it for floor plans.